I'm 74 years old. I built a $320 million real estate empire from nothing, 11 properties across 5 states. A lakefront estate in Lake Forest that could hold 3 families, a private office in downtown Chicago with a view I never look at anymore. And for the past 12 years, my only daughter has not returned a single one of my calls, not one. I've sent her a letter every month for 12 years. That's 144 letters. Every single one has come back unopened. She has 2 children now, my grandchildren. I've never met them. I don't know their names. I don't know if they know I exist. And the thing that haunts me most, I can trace every step that led here, every deal I prioritized, every Saturday I missed, every recital, every dinner, every moment I traded for one more closing. I earned this silence. Let me tell you how. I grew up in Gary, Indiana. If you know Gary, you know what that means. Steel mills, working-class families, fathers who came home exhausted, and mothers who made every dollar stretch. My father worked at the mill for 31 years. He died at 53. Heart attack. Just collapsed one morning getting ready for his shift. I was 24 years old, and standing at his funeral, looking at the small house he'd worked his whole life to pay off, I made myself a promise. I would never be poor. I would never struggle the way he struggled. I would build something that would last, something that would mean my family would never worry about money again. That promise drove everything that came after. But here's what I didn't understand then. Promises made from fear don't lead you to good places. They lead you to prisons you build yourself. I started in real estate at 27. Got my license, worked for a small brokerage, learned the business from the ground up. At 29, I scraped together everything I had plus money borrowed from my father-in-law and bought my first property. A failing strip mall in suburban Indianapolis. 8 units, half of them vacant, the parking lot cracked, the whole thing looking like it was one bad winter away from collapse. I saw what others didn't. Location near a growing residential development, undervalued land, deferred maintenance that looked worse than it was. I worked on that property myself, nights and weekends, fixed the parking lot, painted the facades, found new tenants. Within 2 years, it was fully leased and cash flowing. I sold it for 3 times what I paid. And something clicked. Not just about real estate, about me. I was good at this. I could see opportunities others missed. I could make things happen. And that feeling of turning nothing into something, it was intoxicating. But I had no idea what it would cost me. What I didn't notice was what was happening at home while I was discovering my talent for deals. My wife Helen and I had married when I was 27. Sarah, our daughter, was born when I was 29, the same year I bought that first strip mall. And from the very beginning, I treated my family like a project I could get back to later. Helen ran the household. I funded it. She raised Sarah. I paid for things. We had a division of labor that made sense on paper. She handled the daily work of family. I handled the daily work of building wealth. But paper doesn't capture what actually happens. Paper doesn't show the dinners I missed, the bedtimes I wasn't there for, the school plays I watched on videotape weeks later because I was in Houston or New York or some other city, sitting in some other conference room, closing some other deal. I told myself Helen understood. I told myself Sarah understood. I told myself they knew I was doing it for them, that the sacrifice now would pay off later, that there would be time for family once I'd built enough. Do you know how many times I said the words After this deal, after this deal, I'll take a vacation. After this deal, I'll be home more. After this deal, things will slow down. There was always another deal, and the deal always won. By the time I was 45, I owned 14 commercial properties. By 50, I had a development company with 32 employees. By 55, my net worth crossed $100 million. I was a success by every measure that mattered to me. And I was a stranger in my own home. Sarah grew up while I was building that empire. She went from a little girl who used to wait by the window for my car to a teenager who barely looked up when I walked in the door. By the time she was in college, our conversations lasted maybe 5 minutes. How are classes? Fine. Do you need anything? No. That was it. I thought it was just how teenagers were. I thought we'd reconnect when she was older, when she could appreciate what I'd built, when she could understand why I'd made the choices I made. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about everything. At March 15th, 2012, I remember the date because it was the day my life split in two. I was 62 years old. I had just closed the largest deal of my career, a $240 million mixed-use development in downtown Chicago. Office tower, retail space, residential units, the kind of project that defines a career. That morning, before I left for the closing, Helen met me at the breakfast table. She had a folder in her hands. She slid it across to me without saying a word. Divorce papers, 31 years of marriage, and she handed me divorce papers the same morning I was closing the deal of a lifetime. I asked her why now, why this day. She said, because I've been waiting for you to notice that I'm unhappy for 15 years. And today I realized you never will. You'll close this deal, and there will be another deal, and then another. And I'll be sitting here, alone, waiting for a man who is never going to show up. I'm done waiting. I drove to the closing. I signed the papers for the $240 million deal, and you know what I felt? Nothing. Not triumph. Not satisfaction. Not grief about my marriage. Nothing. I sat in my car in the parking garage afterward, holding both sets of documents, the deal in one hand, the divorce in the other, and I realized I had become something less than human. I had optimized myself so completely for transactions that I couldn't feel anything else. That night, I called Sarah. She was 33 years old. I hadn't seen her in 4 months. I wanted to tell her about the divorce, to explain, to maybe start building something with her that I'd never built with Helen. She didn't answer. I left a message. She never called back. 2 weeks later, I tried again. Same result. A month after that, I drove to her apartment. She saw me through the window and didn't answer the door. I stood on her porch for 20 minutes, knocking, calling her name. Nothing. Finally, Helen told me what Sarah had said. She said she didn't have a father. She said she had a funding source who occasionally appeared at holidays looking distracted. She said she'd spent her entire childhood waiting for me to show up, really show up, and I never did. And she was done waiting just like her mother was done waiting. That was 12 years ago. I haven't spoken to my daughter since. Let me tell you what I lost, not in abstractions, in specifics. I missed approximately 1,400 Saturday mornings with Sarah between the ages of 5 and 32. That's 27 years of Saturdays. I was working, I was traveling, I was closing deals, I was building a fortune. And she was growing up without me. I missed her high school graduation, June 1997. I was in Houston, closing a retail center development. I told myself I'd make the next one. I missed her college graduation. May 2001. I was in New York, negotiating financing for an office tower. Helen went alone. I wasn't there when she got engaged. I found out 3 weeks after it happened, through Helen. The man she was going to marry, I'd met him once, maybe twice. And her wedding, I wasn't there. 2 months before the ceremony, I received a formal note, not an invitation, a note. It asked me not to attend. It said my presence would make the day about something other than her happiness. It said she wanted one day that wasn't about waiting for me to leave early or checking my phone. My only child got married, and I wasn't there. I wasn't invited. I was asked to stay away. Sarah has 2 children now, a daughter who is 8, a son who is 5, my grandchildren. I have never met them. I have never held them. I don't know their names because she won't tell me. They don't know I exist because she won't tell them. I did the math recently, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't stop myself. Over 40 years in commercial real estate, I spent approximately 47,000 hours on deals, site visits, negotiations, due diligence, financing, closings, property management, tenant relations, development oversight. 47,000 hours building a $320 million empire. In that same 40 years, I spent less than 4,000 hours with my family. That's the real ledger. 47,000 hours chasing wealth. 4,000 hours with the people I claimed to be doing it for. I traded my daughter for a portfolio. I traded my marriage for a net worth. And now I sit in a 6-bedroom lakefront estate, alone, with more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, and no one who wants to spend time with me. Helen remarried 5 years after our divorce, a retired teacher, a man who was home every evening, who took walks with her, who had time. She's happier now than she ever was with me. I know because I've seen them in town. The way she looks at him, she never looked at me that way. Not once. After the divorce, I kept working. What else was I going to do? The business was all I knew, all I had. But something had shifted. The deals didn't feel the same. The wins felt hollow. Every closing just reminded me of that morning in the parking garage, holding success in one hand and failure in the other. At 65, I sold my operating company, kept the real estate holdings but stopped active development. I told myself I was retiring. Really, I was surrendering. I had finally run out of excuses to keep running. I tried to reach Sarah, really tried, not just phone calls and letters. I hired someone to find her address after she moved to avoid my letters. I sent gifts to my grandchildren every birthday, every Christmas, all returned. Address unknown. I showed up at her new house once, 2 years ago. I just wanted to see her face, maybe meet the children, maybe start over. She opened the door, looked at me, and closed it without a word. 10 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived and asked me to leave the property. My own daughter called the police on her father. That's who I am to her now, not family, a threat. At 68, I had a heart attack, triple bypass surgery. Lying in that hospital bed, I had weeks to think. And I realized something I should have understood decades earlier. Some damage can't be repaired. Some bridges, once burned, stay burned. I had spent my entire life believing I could fix anything with enough effort, enough money, enough persistence. But you can't fix a relationship with someone who no longer wants one. You can't buy back years you chose not to spend. You can't close a deal on forgiveness. My daughter doesn't hate me. That would require caring enough to feel something. She's simply moved on. I'm not part of her life, not part of her children's lives, and that's a choice she made because I made my choices first. I'm not telling you this because I want your sympathy. I don't deserve it. I made my choices with my eyes open. I knew what I was trading when I traded it. I just didn't believe the bill would ever come due. I'm telling you this because you're probably making the same calculation I made. You're probably telling yourself the same lies I told myself. After this project, when things slow down, once I hit this number, when the kids are older later, someday, let me save you 40 years of regret. That day never comes. The number keeps moving. The project leads to another project. And one morning you wake up and realize you optimized your life for the wrong variable. You think your family understands. They don't. They're keeping score. They're watching every missed dinner, every broken promise, every time you chose work over them. They might not say anything, but they're learning who you are by what you do, not what you say. Your children don't need your money. They need your presence. They need you at the recital, not the video of the recital. They need you at dinner, not the expensive restaurant you send them to with your credit card. They need your time. And time is the one thing you cannot buy back. I want you to do something today, not tomorrow, not after this project. Today, leave the office at 5. Go home, sit with your family. Put your phone away. Be there. Actually there. Not thinking about the deal while you pretend to listen. Not checking emails under the table. Present. Go to the game, the recital, the school play, even if it's inconvenient, especially if it's inconvenient, because your child will remember who was in the audience. They'll remember for the rest of their lives. Call your parents if they're still alive, not a quick check-in, a real conversation. Ask them about their lives. Listen to the answer. You don't have as much time as you think. And if someone you love has been telling you they need more of you, believe them. Don't assume they'll keep waiting. Don't assume you can make it up later. The later you're counting on may never come. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking your situation is different. Your family understands. Your spouse supports your ambition. Your children know you love them. Maybe you're right. Or maybe you're telling yourself the same story I told myself for 30 years until my wife handed me divorce papers and my daughter stopped returning my calls. The deals will always be there. There will always be another opportunity, another transaction, another zero to add to your net worth. But your daughter's childhood happens once. Your marriage exists in the present or it doesn't exist at all. The people you love are here now. They won't wait forever. I'm 74 years old. If I'm lucky, maybe 15 more years, maybe less. My heart has already tried to quit once. My body is winding down, and I spend my days in a 6-bedroom house with a housekeeper and a groundskeeper and no family. I have $320 million. I have 11 properties I rarely visit. I have a private office I don't use. And I have 2 grandchildren who have never heard my voice. I won every deal. I built everything I set out to build. I kept every promise I made to that scared 24-year-old at his father's funeral, and I lost everything that actually mattered. The ledger balanced. I just didn't like what it showed. If anything I've said sounds like your life, change it. Not tomorrow, not after the next deal, now, because you don't get a warning. You don't get a second chance. You just wake up one day and your daughter won't return your calls. And you'll sit in your empty house and wonder how you could have been so successful and still ended up so alone. Don't build my life. Build something better. Your family is waiting, but not forever. If this mattered to you, share it. Leave a comment. Tell me what you're going to do differently. And subscribe. I have more to say, and not much time left to say it.